This is episode 18 of the Shame Proof Your Life podcast, the one where I talk about Mother's Day. I'm your host and life coach, Danita Bremer. Have you ever received a prompting that you ignored for a long time, like 17 years? This podcast is that for me. I'm telling my stories, I'm learning from my past, and I'm inviting you along for the ride because I know my story can help others. I'm not alone, and neither are you. Okay, so my apologies for not airing this episode last week, but living through Mother's Day this year is what kind of triggered this topic for me of Mother's Day shame. And now I'm like, it's so obvious. Why didn't I look at the calendar and look ahead to all of the holidays and create episodes around them? So I might be doing that. But for now, we're coming at you after Mother's Day. And I have a lot of thoughts about why moms hate Mother's Day or why we dislike Mother's Day. I noticed that a lot of moms really dislike Mother's Day. And I think it's kind of defeating the purpose of the day, right? I actually saw a post on Instagram or somewhere that was talking about how Mother's Day originally was supposed to be for a totally different purpose. And now it has morphed into this thing where we honor our moms. So, maybe we could go back and look at that of what the original purpose was. But for now, I just want to talk about why Mother's Day is so painful for so many of us. I'm just going to tell you my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts. Come find me on Instagram at Danita Bremer Coaching or um, find me on my website, danitabremer.com, whichever way you want to connect. And let me know if I've totally missed the mark here or if my thoughts are right in line with how you feel. My own personal experience has kind of been a roller coaster. It seems like every Mother's Day is unique and different in how I feel. But definitely when I was a new mom, I didn't have much of an expectation, right? Because my baby was little. It's not like she could like make a card or get me flowers, right? So I was still sort of figuring out my thoughts about my husband's role in Mother's Day and what I should or shouldn't expect of him or what he should or shouldn't expect. And so those first few years were fine. I've definitely had some years along the way where it was not a great day. I was disappointed. I was sad, those kinds of emotions. And I've had some years as well where I had a great day and I didn't feel disappointment. I didn't like have a ton of expectations. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But this year was one of those years for me that I was just like, oh, this is a great day. Not because it's Mother's Day, right? And like I said, I'll talk some more, but I want to just tell you a few of my thoughts about why I think so many women don't like Mother's Day. And the first one is, and the most important one actually, is that I think that it highlights how we feel we are falling short as moms, which is so ironic, right? It's supposed to be a day, at least this is how I think of Mother's Day, a day set aside for honoring our mothers and like all the things that they do for us, because we all know that moms do a lot and it doesn't all get recognized. Now, I personally feel like we should be doing that all year long. It shouldn't just be one day. But I also appreciate the fact that there is one specific day set aside to like, hey, let's celebrate our moms. Let's honor our moms. I think it can be both and. But a lot of people that I've noticed, like conversations on social media, conversations I've had in person with my friends, is this underlying idea that everyone is going to talk about how amazing and wonderful their moms are, and I'm going to feel terrible. And my question is why? Why, if someone else talks about how amazing their mom is, why do you then feel terrible? And I think the answer is because we hear those stories and we have thoughts like, I'm not that amazing. Well, I didn't do that. My kids don't love me that much, right? We have all these terrible feeling thoughts. And what I mean by that is we have the thoughts that then create a feeling in us that don't feel good. And so it almost is like we use it as an opportunity to beat ourselves up, to show ourselves how we are falling short in the mom department. And what I want to say is quit it, right? Like just stop. Stop making Mother's Day about how far short you are falling as a mom. Just assume you are doing a fantastic job always. I just heard one of my coaches talking about this and how she just assumes that she just always is doing a good job. Maybe it's not true necessarily. Like maybe your kids would be like, no, mom, you shouldn't have done that. You should have done this other thing. But when you just assume you're always doing the best you can and it's always a fantastic job, it's always what your kids need exactly in that moment, or maybe it's some combination of what your kids need and what you need, it feels good to you. And guess what happens when you feel good? You become a better mom, right? You're more lighthearted or fun, or, maybe just not as grumpy. That's the whole point is like, how can we think about ourselves? How can we think about our lives in a way that just always feels good? And it's not always going to feel good. That's the thing is like we're human, so it's not always going to feel good, but can we not add to the feeling badness of it? I know that that is easier said than done of just stop beating yourself up, stop making it a day that shows you how much you're falling short, but I promise you with practice you can do that. Okay, the second reason I think that Mother's Day is difficult for moms, and I'm not like outright saying it here, but shame definitely is playing a role in what I just said about how we're falling short. That's shame. That's like the way I am is not good enough. But the second reason is that we set ourselves up for disappointment. We have all these grand expectations that are like perfectionist fantasies in the name of one of my coaches. And we get this kind of like hit, this reward off of just fantasizing about what Mother's Day could be like. And then when it doesn't happen that way, we're disappointed. And we are the ones doing it to ourselves. There's a few different reasons I think that this happens, but I'm only talk about two of them here. The first one is we think our children should somehow honor us on Mother's Day. But children are still children on Mother's Day, just like they are every other day of the year. Maybe sometimes they choose to honor us. They choose to celebrate us. They choose to say, hey, mom, I love you so much. Thank you for everything you do. And maybe not, right? I have amazing kids. I love them. They're smart, they're witty, they're funny, they're talented in so many ways. They do not willingly, of their own accord, tell me, Mom, I love you so much. You're doing such a great job. You're a great mom. They just don't, even on Mother's Day. This year, I went to them 6 days before Mother's Day and I said, I have an announcement to make. Mother's Day is in 6 days. I would love some loving care, or if you want to do a gift or a card or whatever, I don't care. I'm not going to tell you what to do for me. I want you to come up with what feels loving to you. And then I walked away from that thinking they might not do it. That's totally fine too. Right. But when we think that, oh, this is the day they should do it, or my husband should help them do it, or whatever, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment when they don't follow through because they're humans. They're not always going to follow through just because the calendar says it's that day. And you get to decide what your expectations are or aren't. And then I think so there's the one end of it is that we have these really high expectations and then they don't happen and we feel disappointed. But then there's the other end of it where like we can have expectations. Sometimes we want to have expectations, but then we need to know how to voice those expectations. So this year, I told my husband that I wanted a bouquet of flowers. I'm not a huge flower person, but some friends of ours that recently moved, they bought a flower shop. It's about a half an hour away from us and gorgeous, gorgeous flowers. And I wanted to support them. And I thought, oh, I want to get some flowers from their shop. So I told my husband, I specifically want flowers from this shop. Not because I think I deserve flowers or that's, whatever. I was just like, okay, for Mother's Day, this is what I want. Some years I have specific things that I want. One year I really wanted an iPad and I didn't want to wait till my birthday in June. So I said, hey, for Mother's Day, can I get an iPad? And so my husband got me an iPad. But I think often as moms, we are so practiced at not speaking up for what we want or not thinking that our desires are valid. Go back to my episode on wanting a tennis skirt and how we're kind of trained and socialized to believe that our desires are not valid or are inappropriate. And then we don't know how to speak up for what we want. So that's another way we kind of set ourselves up for disappointment, right? So I don't want you to not have expectations. I mean, that is one way to do it. You could just be like, this is just like any other day. Maybe I'll get a gift or flowers or a nice dinner or something like that, or maybe not, right? If you have expectations, it's hard to just be like, no, I don't expect that, right? If you genuinely want your kids to like come snuggle you in bed or bring you breakfast in bed or sing you a song or whatever it is that your kids do, create a piece of art for you or write you a card, then I would say, I would love it if you would write me a card this Mother's Day. I would love it if you would call me on the phone. I would love it if, whatever, if you got me flowers or a nice dinner, like whatever that is for you, whatever your expectation is, you get to say it out loud if you want. I don't want you to deny yourself of the expectations. There's I think you can speak up and voice those expectations, or you can work on, you know what? Maybe I just shouldn't expect anything. Whichever route is a little bit easier for you, that's the one I would try first. The third reason I think that Mother's Day is sometimes painful for moms is because the emotional labor still remains. So we kind of have this idea that Mother's Day is like a day off or it's a day to be pampered or something like that. But then, you know, people don't take the garbage out or like all of those things that as moms, we are sort of implicitly expected to keep track of. We don't let ourselves off the hook for those things and we kind of like just assume that somebody else is going to do them. I have I have a story that's so appropriate for this. So, in the last year since the pandemic hit, one of the things I realized was that I really don't like cooking, making dinner, grocery shopping, all the things that go along with the meal prep in our house. And for years and years, my husband has definitely been helping. Like, it's not like I did it every single day. Sometimes on the weekends, I would be like, I'm tapped out. You got the next two dinners, or we're going out because I don't want to, or whatever. I've been pretty good about kind of saying, like, I don't want to make dinner. Will you do it? But in the last year, I've been kind of like, you know what? I don't want to do it at all. And so my husband has kind of taken that over. Now he's working at home, he doesn't have a commute. It works a little bit easier for him to step in and be able to do that right now. If and when he returns back to the office, it's likely I'll have to do that again. But in this last year, I've been totally pampered and spoiled in my husband taking over most of the meal planning and preparation and cooking part. I still do the dishes. So, one thing that I notice is like we'll buy avocados and we usually have them out in a bowl on our counter. And, the avocados, they are like rock hard until they're not. And then they're like too ripe, right? So, when I was kind of in charge of food and dinners, I would try to keep track of the avocados and like what ripeness they were at. And I found that if I could catch them right when they were like perfectly ripe, those 1 or 2 days, and then put the avocado in the fridge, they would stay at that ripeness for a few days and I could preserve them a little bit longer and they would taste better when I used them. So my husband has been kind of in charge of all of that stuff. And so I just, in my mind, assigned all of that to him, right? Assigned like, oh, well, if he's doing the dinner prep, then he should keep track of what is in the fridge and what is in the pantry and like make menus based off of that. He should kind of check the bowl that has the tomatoes and avocados and onions and garlic and like take out the stuff that's starting to get too soft. But then he didn't, because I never said it out loud to him, right? And so he's kind of new to this, doing all the preparation, the shopping for it and cooking. And I'm kind of over here standing in the corner going like, well, why isn't he putting those avocados in the fridge? And then I realized, oh, he doesn't know to put the avocados in the fridge. He doesn't even like it hasn't crossed his mind, right? And so there's 2 things. When the avocados go bad and I throw them away, I can be like, "Oh my gosh, we're wasting so much food and this is terrible and somebody should really do something about this." Or I could just be like, "Okay, that avocado went bad. Nobody's going to eat it. I'm just going to take care of it." Or I could just be like, "I'm still in charge of the avocados." Right? And I think we do this for Mother's Day. We kind of like mentally think that all the things we're normally in charge of, somebody else is going to step in for the day. My friends, that is probably never going to happen because you can't always keep track of all the things you're in charge of. How is somebody else supposed to like realize it or remember it? So, my solution here is don't think of Mother's Day as a day off. It might be a day where your kids or your husband or your family shows you a little bit more love, a little bit more appreciation. Maybe you have the day off from like cooking dinner or however you do it in your house, but it's not a complete day off because remember, you're an adult. You don't have like a mommy and a daddy who's going to come and like just take care of all the things. We can think of this as emotional adulthood. So, adulthood is taking care of yourself when you're sick because nobody else is going to do it, right? Adulthood is not relying on other people when the car breaks down or when dinner fails or whatever happens and comes up. Adulthood is knowing what you want and making it happen and not having to depend on other people. Emotional adulthood is the same way. Emotional adulthood is taking care of yourself emotionally when you're not feeling well. When you're disappointed that Mother's Day hasn't turned out, your kids or your husband or your own parents or whoever, your best friend, they're not going to come take it off your plate. You're going to have to do that. Emotional adulthood is not relying on other people for your emotions. Emotional adulthood is knowing what you want and making it happen on your own. And this might feel like blunt or I don't know, it might feel like an affront to everything you've been believing. But what I'm offering you here is if you shift how you think about Mother's Day and the expectations and how everybody is going to show up, and you just focus on how you are going to show up, I promise you the day will be fantastic every year. That's what I am learning for myself. Like, I kind of went to like Mother's Day is no different than any other day, except that we get candy bars at church. But if I am telling myself, you're amazing, you're doing a good job, you're doing the best you can, you are exactly the perfect mom for your kids, or else Heavenly Father wouldn't have sent you to them or sent them to you, right? Like, if you are telling yourself that stuff every single day, then Mother's Day won't feel so different. And if your kids don't do anything for you, then it's okay, right? Because they're kids and it doesn't mean anything about you. So this year, my 2 younger kids created little coupon books like, I'll make a dessert for you, or I'll do a 10-minute chore. They've gotten very smart to like really put a tight container around the things they will and won't do. And I love that so much because my love language is acts of service. And they know this. We've had conversations about it. And so they gave me little coupons for services that they'll do. I love that one of them was I have a daughter who both my daughters play piano, but one of them plays piano and she doesn't like playing the hymns, but I love the hymns to be played. And so one of her coupons was, I'll play a hymn for you. And I love that so much. My son, he's like super, super into baseball. And he's always sitting at the computer checking the baseball stats or watching a game, or if he can't get the video of the game, watching the play by play of the game. And I'm like, oh, dude, still with the baseball. And so one of his coupons was 1 day without baseball. I thought it was so cute. I was like, he thinks that's what I want. Okay. It's actually very enlightening to see what coupons they make because it shows me what they think I want, right? And sometimes they're right, and sometimes I'm like, "Okay, that one's kinda weird." One of them that my daughter wrote was, "I'll run around the house yelling, 'I love my mom, I love my mom, I love my mom.'" I'm totally gonna take her up on that, by the way. But my oldest daughter, who is a junior in high school, and it's the end of the year, she's had AP tests and SATs and a play that they performed and all the things, and she's working and she's got a lot on her plate right now. She woke up Mother's Day and was like, "Oh, mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't get you anything and I didn't do anything for you." And she is not the type to do like a coupon book, but she was assigned to play the organ in our ward that day. And I was like, "It's okay, you get to play the organ for me on Mother's Day, and I love that." And so she's like madly practicing before church. And so we get to hear organ, hymns playing. And I was like, I love it. A gift. This is such a gift for me because you didn't, like, you've been busy, you didn't think about it. And the universe conspired. I get to hear you play. You're playing, like you're willing to do it. Sometimes she's like, ugh, I wish I didn't have to do this, but she did it. And it's such a gift to me. So why not repurpose the gift? Like, hey, mom, guess what? I'm playing organ for you. And this is your Mother's Day gift. I love it. I genuinely love it so much. It doesn't add anything more to her plate. She is like, "Awesome. I'm so glad you love it," right? Like, it doesn't have to be like I think some moms, some of you guys are like, "Oh, well, you didn't do it for me, so it doesn't count." But what if everything counts? Everything counts, you guys. When your kids come home and they're like, "Mom, I got an A. I got 100% on my test." I'm like, "Awesome. You know what? You did that because you have an awesome mom in part, right? It's not all because of me." And it's like this dichotomy of I supported you and I'm part of you being successful. And also I had nothing to do with it. It's just because you are so amazing. So take whatever credit you want that feels good and leave the rest, or don't take any credit at all if that feels good and just be like, I have such amazing kids. I promise you, though, that you are the fabric of your kids' lives, part of the background, music in their lives. And there's so much that you're doing. I'm getting a little choked up actually thinking about this. There's so much that you're doing that you're not giving yourself credit for that is helping your kids, that is making them the amazing people that they are becoming. And we can say it one way or the other that it has nothing to do with you, or it has everything to do with you, or somewhere in between. But really, it's about you taking responsibility for feeling good as a mom, no matter what happens on Mother's Day. What if that were true? Okay, I'm going to sign off for now. That's enough. And so are you. I so, so, so promise and believe this in my bones that you are enough as a mom for your kids. Until next time, go be you and follow the spirit. I would be ever so grateful if you would rate, review, and share the podcast because here's the thing with shame, it always wants to hide. You never know who's struggling, but rating, reviewing, and sharing the podcast might help someone you had no idea needed it. I would also love to continue the conversation. Come find me on Instagram or Facebook at Danita Bremer Coaching.